Okay, so what else? If it's not about the oil, what is it about? Well, Patrick Byrne, when I did an interview with him, he said that this is about election fraud, that Venezuela runs the black box voting machines that rig elections in the United States. And he said that's the main reason that Trump is going after Maduro, at least one reason among many. And he may very well be correct with that. It's true that one of the black box voting companies is based out of Venezuela. And it is true that our elections are being rigged again and again and again because of black box voting. And it's true that the Democrats, of course, work with that whole ecosystem to cheat and to give themselves more seats in the House and more seats in the Senate, etc. So you could argue that the kidnapping of Maduro and essentially the overthrow of Venezuela was necessary to protect America's election integrity. And maybe that's absolutely true. Could be. But if so, why doesn't Trump just tell us that? Why doesn't he just say, well, hey, our elections have been rigged. I mean, we know the 2020 election was stolen from Trump. That's just blatantly obvious. So it's all been rigged, and it's been going on, especially in the midterms. The Democrats in California and other places, they rig everything. That's how they get so many seats. It's all rigged. And if Trump were to just level with the American people, hey, the vote rigging's coming out of Venezuela, and we got to stop that to protect our election integrity. We need to go kidnap this guy and overthrow his country. I think actually more people would buy that than the current excuse of we have to stop drugs, because it's not going to stop drugs. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that most of the drugs coming across the border don't come out of Venezuela. They come from other countries, and they involve Mexico, and they involve Colombia, among others, but Venezuela is not the number one source of illegal drugs. So that's just a story. But, if that theory is true, it's interesting. This may have just given the GOP a chance to maintain control in the midterms. See, the GOP has really been abandoning their support base. And you see it all over. You see people's reactions, and also people are dealing with very high inflation, high costs of living, a lot of job losses and job replacements, some of it due to AI, but a lot of it due to just economic decline. And many people who voted for Trump are very unhappy with Trump at this point. But people also despise the Democrats. The Democrats are widely hated because of all their DEI woke nonsense and all they hate America. They hate the Constitution. Now, Trump just ignores the Constitution, but the Democrats actually hate it and want to destroy it. Well, I guess so do the Israeli influencers of the Trump administration. They're talking about destroying the First Amendment now because they can't allow speech that hurts people's feelings or whatever. Yeah, it's getting insane. But the Democrats are widely reviled, and the only way for the Democrats to win, or at least to be certain of their win, would be to cheat, which is what they always do. And they need control of the voting machines in order to cheat. Although I would argue that a lot of the cheating is just done by ballot stuffing, and it doesn't matter who's controlling the voting machines. It's a ballot stuffing operation. They're just rerunning the same ballots over and over again. Or they're using mail-in ballots. They just mail out 10 million ballots all over the place, and then they have their mules, fill them out, round them up, bring them in, stuff them in, and they can cheat that way. Of course, Democrats are going to continue to cheat in every way possible. But if Trump takes away from them this one way of cheating, the black box voting, it might give the GOP a chance, even though the popularity of the GOP is plummeting. There's no other way to say it. Because, number one, where are the arrests? Trump's been in power almost a year. Where are the arrests of the traitors? Where are the real Epstein files? Huh? How come Fauci is still walking free? And Mayorkas and so many other people? What's the deal with that? So Trump hasn't been able to keep his promises about going after these criminals. And, if anything, he has now He's now part of the cover-up of the Epstein files, is what it looks like. So yeah, people are very unhappy about that. Understandably so. And as a result, the GOP is facing an election bloodbath come this November. That's going to be wild. But getting back to Venezuela, what else? What are the other reasons why Trump might want to violate the Constitution and violate international law and aggressively attack, invade, and control Venezuela? Well, it's because of what my friend Michael Yon talks about, routes and resources. See, Venezuela is very close geographically, or close enough to the Gulf of Mexico to be able to present a threat to ships moving in and out of the Gulf of Mexico carrying things like liquid natural gas, LNG, or oil. Now, see, you got to back up to really understand the greater context in all of this. The United States blew up the Nord Stream pipelines in order to cut off Europe from Russian gas and to force Europe to purchase LNG from the United States. And that was to the benefit of some very wealthy people and companies that export natural gas. And a lot of that goes through ports on the southern coast, the Gulf Coast. And then those ships have to make their way, obviously, out of the Gulf to head over to Europe or wherever their destination may be. Well, during that transit, they can be threatened by land-based missiles from Venezuela. And Venezuela is rumored to be receiving missile technology from Russia and possibly from China. And of course, Russian missile technology is very, very capable. Russia has influenced the Iranian missiles that were devastating to Israel over the last summer. And clearly, missile technology has reached a point today where it's no longer unusual for land-based missiles to have a range of a couple thousand kilometers. So that easily puts them within striking distance of the routes of ships coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Well, because geopolitically the world is bifurcating, so splitting into Eastern versus Western hemispheres. And this is true for supply chains and also energy supplies. And this was all instigated by the West, by the way, cutting off Russia from the SWIFT system, economic sanctions against Russia and Iran and other countries, and also the threat of tariffs and so on against China. So there's this splitting of the world. And as part of this split, the Western hemisphere, dominated by the United States, has to protect its own energy resources and energy routes. Because, well, the West isn't going to be able to get energy from Russia. And Europe, for example, is even passing laws to make it illegal to purchase energy from Russia. I think one big law for the EU kicks in about 1 year from now, actually, that would outlaw energy purchases from Russia. It's a suicide cult, of course, running the EU, but that's what they want. They want to starve and freeze to death in the coming winters, and so they cut themselves off from Russian energy, which is cheap and abundant. And then they lock up their own energy supplies as well, to appease the climate lunatics. And so, yeah, they're all going to starve and freeze, and they're going to say, aren't we good for the planet? No, you're dead, actually,